The power of solitude. You wake up. No buzzing phone, no good morning text, no plans on your calendar. Just quiet. And at first, it feels wrong. That kind of silence, it presses on your chest. It whispers questions you don't want to answer. Does anyone even notice I'm here? Society has trained men to interpret stillness as failure. If you're not being chased, if your weekends aren't full, if no one's checking in, then something must be wrong. You must be falling behind. But here's the truth. Silence isn't punishment, it's invitation. It's the doorway to something few men ever step through. The ancient Stoics understood this. They didn't run from solitude. They leaned into it, because that's where clarity lives. That's where noise ends and inner strength begins. A man who walks alone by choice isn't lost. He's refining. He's stepping back, not to hide, but to rebuild. While others chase validation, he strips away distractions. While others fear being alone, he listens to his own voice for the first time in years. And that kind of man, the one who isn't distracted, isn't performing, isn't begging for attention, that man becomes dangerous. Not because he wants control, but because he's taking control of himself. He's not driven by likes, approval, or performance. He's grounded, focused, unshakable. And in a world full of noise, that kind of stillness is magnetic. This video isn't about loneliness. It's about power. The quiet kind. The kind built in solitude. The kind that no one can give you and no one can take away. Let's begin. Part 1. Silence isn't the enemy. Silence is not the enemy, it's the mirror. The first challenge in solitude is not the absence of people, it's the presence of truth. The noise is gone, the distractions fade, and suddenly you're face to face with everything you've buried, the regret you've pushed aside, the opportunity you let slip, the promise you made to yourself and broke when no one was watching. And this is why most men fear stillness. Not because they dislike being alone, but because of what aloneness reveals. It's not loneliness that haunts them. It's self-confrontation. In the gym, you push through pain. In books, you seek wisdom. But real growth, the kind that changes you from the inside out, starts in silence. That's where you meet the real you. Stripped of validation, stripped of performance, and in that moment, you either run or rise. Most don't rise. They jump to the next relationship, the next project, the next screen, anything to stay busy. Not because they're ambitious, but because they're escaping. But the man who stays, who breathes through the discomfort, discovers something rare. He's still here. Still breathing, still capable. And the thoughts that once screamed in his mind, they aren't him. They're just echoes, scripts written by fear, failure, and past versions of himself. He doesn't have to listen. He doesn't have to answer. He just has to stay. That's when transformation begins. He stops needing others to see his worth because he sees it himself. He doesn't fill the void. He lets it exist. And in doing so, he builds something most men never find: inner command. That's not weakness. That's discipline. That's strength. And in a world addicted to noise, the man who chooses silence becomes unforgettable. Part 2. Approval is the invisible addiction. There's an addiction few men ever name, and even fewer recognize: the addiction to approval. It's not as obvious as drugs or alcohol. It doesn't leave scars or crash your life overnight. But it's there, in the small habits. Checking your phone the second you wake up, waiting for a response to that message. Posting something and immediately checking who liked it. On the surface, it seems harmless. But beneath it, it's hunger. a quiet desperation to be noticed, liked, accepted. And over time, that need doesn't connect you. It consumes you. You start adjusting your personality to fit the room. You say yes to things that drain you. You laugh at jokes that don't land. You pretend to agree just to avoid tension. It feels like connection, but it's performance. And every performance chips away at your identity until you no longer know who you are without an audience. You're not living for yourself. You're living for applause. But here's the truth. Applause fades. Approval is a high that doesn't last. And eventually the weight of the mask becomes unbearable. That's when something has to break. And it should be the addiction, not you. The path forward is a detox, not of your body, but of your identity. You stop chasing likes. You stop over-explaining your decisions. You stop apologizing for your standards. And slowly, your real voice returns. Not loud, not perfect, but honest. And something shifts. You don't chase attention anymore. You carry presence. You don't blend in. You stand firm. And the world begins to notice, not because you begged for it, but because you stopped needing it. In letting go of approval, you become real. And that realness, it's unforgettable. Part 3. Solitude creates clarity and alignment. Solitude has a reputation it doesn't deserve. Most people hear the word and imagine emptiness, loneliness, or disconnection. But solitude isn't isolation. It's restoration. It's the process of peeling away everything you're not, so you can finally uncover who you are. In a world that constantly demands your attention, solitude becomes sacred. It offers you something rare: space. Space to think without noise. Space to feel without judgment. Space to breathe without performance. And in that space, something powerful begins to surface: clarity. For the first time in a long time, you begin asking better questions. Not, what do people expect from me? But what do I truly want? Not, how do I impress them? But, who do I become when I'm around them, and do I like that man? In solitude, there's no applause to chase, no roles to play. Just truth. And often that truth is hard to face. You realize many of your goals weren't really yours. The life you were building, maybe it wasn't meant for you. Maybe it was inherited or expected, but not chosen. That's when the shift begins. You stop tolerating shallow conversations and connections that drain you. You stop pretending to be okay with things that never sat right in your soul. You no longer lie to yourself just to avoid the discomfort of change. Instead, you begin to live in alignment, not for approval, not for applause, but for peace, for integrity, for wholeness. And here's the beauty of it. People may not understand. Some will walk away, others might judge, but you won't flinch. Because when your life starts reflecting your values, your energy becomes rooted. You're no longer swayed by every opinion or trend. You move differently, not because you have something to prove, but because you finally know what matters. And that kind of alignment, it's rare, it's powerful, it's yours. Part 4. Clarity through solitude. Rebuilding the real you. At some point, the journey of solitude moves beyond discomfort and becomes something sacred. It's no longer about escaping the noise, it's about cleansing what the noise buried. This is the stage of deep transformation. Solitude is no longer a void you fear. It's a fire you enter. And that fire doesn't burn you down. It purifies. It strips away the false layers, the borrowed goals, the roles you thought you had to play just to be accepted. In the silence, the real you begins to speak, not with noise, but with knowing. You start to question the life you've been chasing. The goals you once worked so hard for, were they ever really yours? Or were they someone else's dream, a parent's expectation, a cultural default? In solitude, you stop pretending. You stop tolerating the disconnect between your values and your reality. You begin to admit the hard truths you've avoided for years. And for the first time, you begin to build, not for performance, not for perfection, but for authenticity. This rebuilding doesn't look dramatic from the outside. There are no grand announcements. But inside, everything changes. You stop explaining your decisions to people who never understood your vision. You stop needing validation to feel worthy. Because now, you understand yourself. You know what drives you. You know what drains you. You know who you are and who you'll never be again. And something incredible happens. Life begins to align. You no longer chase people or opportunities. The right people stay, the wrong ones fade, and the doors that matter, they open. Not because you forced them, but because you became the man who was ready to walk through them. That's not luck. That's clarity. That's the power of a man who finally chose to return to himself. The man who walks alone has chosen himself. Silence isn't a void. It's a mirror and an invitation. It asks you to stop looking outward and start listening inward. You don't need more noise, more women, more distractions. What you need is stillness, discipline, self-awareness. The man who chooses solitude isn't retreating. He's refining. He's letting go of everything that isn't aligned so he can finally become who he was meant to be. When you choose yourself, everything changes. You stop chasing what's not yours. You stop proving. You start becoming. And from that centered place, life begins to move differently. Opportunities arise. The right people stay. The rest fades. That's not luck. That's clarity. That's the reward for the man who does the inner work. If this message stirred something in you, don't just scroll past. Leave a comment. I choose solitude to build my strength. Hit that like button, not for us, but for the man you're becoming. And subscribe to Ancient Stoic Secrets if you're ready to stop performing and start leading from the inside out. This journey is yours. Let's walk it deliberately and with purpose.